Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, aka Succinct. My name is Jaia Hendrickson, and today I'm going to be picking back up where I left off in my last video in Chapter 2 of Principles of Social Psychology. We're going to start right here at Sources of Social Knowledge. So, in most cases, once a schema has been developed, it'll be difficult to change because the expectation leads us to process new information in a way that strengthens those schemas rather than weakens them. The tendency towards assimilation is so strong that it has substantial effects on our everyday social cognition. And one outcome of assimilation is confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is the tendency for people to favor information that confirms their expectations, regardless of whether that information is true or not. So we see here in the picture on the left-hand side, we have some examples of confirmation bias. So first we have not seeking out objective facts. So if you have a belief or an idea or expectation, you're not going to seek out objective facts if that's going to disprove that belief. And then we have interpreting information to support your existing belief. So if someone's presented with new information, they may interpret it in a way that's going to fit in with their existing schemas or ideas or beliefs, even if that interpretation is not accurate to the information they've been presented with. And then we also have only remembering details that uphold your belief. So if you are presented with information and if there's parts of that information that go against your belief, then you're more likely to forget those parts and remember the parts that do agree with your beliefs. And then finally we have ignoring information that challenges your belief. So a good idea might be thinking about political parties. People will often ignore information if it happens to challenge maybe a political figure or their political perspective. And then we also have what's known as the self-fulfilling prophecy. And the self-fulfilling prophecy is the process that occurs when our expectations about others lead us to behave in ways towards those others that makes those expectations come true. So we see here on the right-hand side, we have a picture of self-fulfilling prophecy. Our actions towards others impact others' beliefs about us, which causes others' actions towards us, and reinforces our beliefs about ourselves, which influences our actions. So as you see, it's just one big cycle. And an example of self-fulfilling philosophy is, there was once they did a study where they told these teachers that there was a group of students that were basically smarter and more academically gifted than the other students. And so after a certain period, they went back and they tested this group of students, and they found that the students did in fact do better than other students. But the only reason they did was because the teachers gave them more attention and basically catered to them, and so that they would get better grades. When in fact they weren't actually smarter than any of the other kids. But the teachers were told this, so they behaved in ways that the kids were able to receive better education, more attention, and so they were in the end the better group. All right, Galen Bodenheisen in 1990 did a study where he presented research participants with information regarding court cases on jury trials. And he also obtained from these participants, through self-report measures, whether they considered themselves to be day people, so they felt better, more alert in the day, or they considered themselves to be night people, so more alert during the evening. And what Bodenheisen found, and what we see here in the study, is that participants were more likely to make use of their stereotypes when making judgments about the guilt or innocence of a case, when it was during the time that they acknowledged that they were most fatigued. So that is, people that said they were more day people, they used their stereotypes more at night. And people that said they were night people, used their stereotypes more during the daytime. And this experiment lended support to the idea that schemas, and in this case about social groups, serve in part to make our lives easier, and that we rely on them when we want to rely on cognitive efficiency. For this case, when, say, you're tired. All right, I have an exercise in critical thinking that I want you guys to do here. So I want you to describe or think about a time when you learned new information or new behaviors through operant, associational, or observational learning. So think about a time that you might have learned from the consequences of your actions, your behaviors, or you might have learned from associating two things, or from just observing someone's behavior. So just think about that and keep that in the back of your head. All right, let's talk a bit about how we use our expectations. So automatic cognition refers to thinking that occurs out of our awareness. quickly and without taking much effort. Most of us can ride a bike or operate a television remote control in an automatic way. And even though it might have taken us some time to do these things when we were first learning, it just doesn't require that same amount of effort anymore. And because we spend a lot of time making judgments about people, many of those judgments, in particular the ones about people that we don't know much about or who don't matter much to us, are made in an automatic way. Now, when we deliberately think about and size up something, say for instance a person, well, we would call this thoughtful cognition or controlled cognition. And although you might think that controlled cognition occurs more than automatic thinking does, well, that's not always the case. The problem is thinking requires time and effort, and those are two things that people often don't have too much available. So as a result, we often rely on automatic cognition. And then priming is a technique in which information is temporarily brought into memory through exposure of situational events. So an example of priming might be after going to the doctor's office for an appointment, you might be more likely to point out or spot out words such as nurse or doctor in an advertisement when you're walking around outside. All right, let's talk a bit about heuristics and biases. So a cognitive heuristic is an information processing rule of thumb that allows us to think in quick and easy ways, but they may also sometimes lead to errors. So one example of a heuristic is a representative heuristic. Now, a representative heuristic occurs when we base our judgments on information that seems to represent or match what we expect is going to happen while ignoring base rate information. And base rate information is essentially the likelihood that events occur in a large population. So an example of a representative heuristic could be if you were, say, at the hospital and someone told you that a nurse is about to be with you soon, well, you might automatically assume that that nurse is going to be a female. And that's because you have a mental representation that nurses are often females. And that might be because of maybe you've seen it in media. And in reality, women do make up a huge portion of nurses. And then the tendency to make judgments of a frequency of an event or the likelihood that event will occur on the basis of which you can retrieve that from your mind and your memory is known as availability heuristic. So for example, after watching Jaws, you might assume that shark attacks are more frequent than they are, or that when you go to the beach, you're more likely to get attacked by a shark. Another example might be after reading the news about carjacking, you might assume that carjackings occur more than they actually do, or that you're more likely to have your car jacked in your neighborhood. And cognitive biases, on the other hand, is a tendency to search for and interpret information in a way that confirms one's perception. So one example of a biases could be the false consensus bias. And this is a tendency to overestimate the amount and the extent to which people are similar to us. So, for instance, if you're in favor of abortion rights, you oppose gun control, and you prefer rock music over jazz music, well, you're more likely to assume that other people share these beliefs as well. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be the end of this video, as well as the end for Chapter 2 in Principles of Social Psychology. And in this chapter, we covered social learning and social cognition. So I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope to see you guys next time.